Apathy in the Christian community is why America is facing such political turmoil and cultural degradation right now. What do you think of that statement? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt, and I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. And I want to talk today about the Christian community in particular and its impact on the political world, on the culture, and whether Christians in particular have been way too quiet in recent decades, in recent years, in recent times, however you want to quantify that. And that quietness has led to the cultural degradation America is now seeing, which of course feeds in to the political degradations, the political perils that we face. My guest today has a few thoughts on that, but before I get into that, I want to mention that Bold and Blunt is now offered on edify.app/podcasts. That is the platform to go to if you are looking for faith-based podcasts to edify you through these, dark, bleak, perilous times. You can also get Bold and Blunt at WashingtonTimes.com. In fact, you can subscribe to Bold and Blunt along with all my commentaries that I write all day long at the Washington Times, giving you the bullet points you need to fight the far left, the cultural Marxists, the socialists, and so forth. In other words, the Democrat Party. Just go to WashingtonTimes.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, find the newsletter link, click on it, and voila, somewhere among the lineup of very esteemed writers at the Washington Times, you will find my page, my Bold and Blunt page, my commentary newsletter page. You can click on it, sign up for it, support the work the Washington Times does for America, for patriotic America, by signing on to some of these newsletters. Of course, I'd love to have you sign on to mine, but sign on to any and all of the Washington Times newsletters. It supports us. It gives us cause to brag to advertisers about our very widening, expanding base of readers, and that, of course, in turn, prompts advertisers to place ads with the Washington Times, which in turn funds us. So you got to support the media organizations that do the good work that you, the people of America, need done by members of the media. If every media outlet were CNN and every media personality or pundit or journalist was Brian Stelter, where would America be? We're already facing dark enough times, yes? Which segues nicely into my topic of today. Let me read you this. It was from January 2015, but it's a really good analysis. It's from Cambridge, the British Journal of Political Science. Does church attendance cause people to vote? That's the question. Using blue laws repeal to estimate the effect of religiosity on voter turnout. Blue laws repeal. I actually grew up during this time. I was in Massachusetts, and the blue laws there said unequivocally that on Sundays, all places of business, save a very few, had to close. And I even remember that it was when I was in high school that my brother got a job at one of the retail outlets down the road, and they just started opening on Sundays, and it was a big deal in Massachusetts at the time. Yes, this is the same leftist Massachusetts that is the breeding ground for today's socialists. But at one time, Massachusetts, remember, this is where a lot of the founding fathers came from. The original Tea Party, right? The Boston Tea Party. It used to be a land of freedom and individualism and independence, fierce independence. But now they've fallen on collectivist times. But anyhow, the blue laws basically said that the businesses had to be closed. And my brother actually had a job at one of these retail outlets that was one of the first to open on Sundays. And boy, what an outcry from so many in, even Massachusetts, because even those in Massachusetts who did not go to church every Sunday recognize Sunday still as a day of rest, as a day of family gathering around the dinner table, around the home. It was a time to unwind from the business of the work week, the Monday through Saturday work week, and to stay at home with friends and family. And so when this business opened, it was a big deal. Now, businesses that don't open on Sunday are the much bigger deal. Chick-fil-A still won't open on Sunday. And there are a ton of people out there that criticize Chick-fil-A for that because they don't go worshiping at the altar of the money god for Sunday, but rather stick with the biblical principles upon which that particular business was built and expanded. So back to this study, Cambridge.org, British Journal of Political Science. Does church attendance cause people to vote? Let me read right from the summary, the abstract of this particular study. Regular church attendance is strongly associated with a higher probability of voting. It is an open question as to whether this association, which has been confirmed in numerous surveys, is causal. The repeal of the laws restricting Sunday retail activity, also called blue laws, is used to measure the effects of church-going on political participation. Blue laws repeal caused a 5% decrease in church attendance. Okay, let me sidestep from the quoting for a second. So, businesses that were allowed to open on Sunday all of a sudden spread far and wide, and coincidentally enough, church attendance fell by 5%. Now back to this abstract. Its effect on political participation was measured, and it was found that following the repeal, turnout fell by approximately 1 percentage point. This decline in turnout is consistent with the large effect of church attendance on turnout reported in the literature and suggests that church attendance may have a significant causal effect on voter turnout. Let me just finish with this. For a large number of Americans, still quoting from this, attending religious services is a routine and important part of life. On an average Sunday, roughly a quarter of the population of the United States attends religious services, and roughly half of the population attends religious services at least monthly. That was 2015. You know, church attendance just in those few short years has fallen off dramatically. Why? Well, part of the reason you have to acknowledge, as this study clearly shows, as this abstract clearly demonstrates, is that the rise in business on Sunday, the rise in business activity on Sunday, has drawn people away from the church pews and into the retail outlets. Instead of going to church, people go shopping. You don't need a study to see that that's true. Just drive down the road on a Sunday morning, say at 11 o'clock, and look at which parking lots are more filled with cars. Is it your local church? Are they your local church's parking lots? Or is it your local Walmart, your local Target, your local IHOP even? People don't go to church in America on Sunday morning to the same degree, to the same frequency that they used to in America. People go shopping. People go grocery shopping, retail shopping, clothes shopping, shoe shopping. And let me summarize why this is a concern to me in particular. Let me go back to reading the first line of this abstract. Regular church attendance is strongly associated with a higher probability of voting. So we are getting fewer and fewer churchgoers at the ballot box because they're out shopping. And the voters we are getting at the ballot box are more and more secular in nature. Because plenty of studies, and I've covered them all practically on Bold and Blunt over the months and years this podcast has been going on, but plenty of studies have shown that America is growing more and more secular. Fewer and fewer people are going to church. Fewer and fewer Americans are identifying as Christians, and especially as Bible-believing Christians, and more Americans are identifying as the nuns, the people who maybe believe in something but aren't sure what they believe in. It's kind of like one of those, if it feels good, then it must be spiritual. Love is love and God is love, and you can do all because Jesus loves you and there is no condemnation, there is no sin, there certainly is no consequences for action. That sort of characterizes the rise of the nuns, the ones who say they're religious or say that they maybe believe in something, but if you ask them to point out what it is they believe in, they really can't tell you. They're the fence straddlers. So now let me get to my point for talking about all this. From a Pew Research poll just recently, let me read you this short paragraph. White evangelical Protestants have been among the Republican Party's most loyal constituencies, and this remained true in 2020. More than 8 in 10 white evangelical Protestant voters who attend religious services frequently, 85%, voted for Trump in that most recent election in 2020, as did 81% of those who attend less frequently. White evangelical Protestants tend to be more religious than other Christians by a number of measures, including in their worship habits. 2/3 of white evangelical voters attend monthly or more often, while 1/3 attend less frequently. But the big money quote here is white evangelical Protestants have been among the Republican Party's most loyal constituencies. So, if you're looking at the landscape of America and you are seeing the far left loons taking over, you have to look at these stats, you have to look at these studies, you have to look at these analyses and conclude to at least some small degree that the Christian community has been derelict in their duty and ceded the nation to these far leftist loons. What America needs is not so much more Republicans in office versus loony Democrats. That would help. But more than that, what America needs is a massive uprising from the Christian community, with members loudly and boldly proclaiming that they're not going to take it anymore, that enough's enough, that boys are boys, and boys are boys because they are born that way, and boys are born that way because, hey, God ordained that. And girls similarly are born girls because, hey, God ordained that. And we need people who aren't afraid to speak out and be strong on principles that just a few short years ago were accepted, so accepted, in fact, that they could go unstated. We didn't have to have debates in America about, please define what a woman is, or what a girl is, or what a female is. We didn't have to have that question asked of a Supreme Court nominee, because such an issue, such a question, such a matter was not contested. This is how far the loons have infiltrated their lunacy in America. And to a degree, to at least some degree, this is not just anecdotal, this is not just my opinion, this is fact-based, analysis-based. To at least some degree, it's because the Christian community has ceded the nation, a nation that was built on religious freedom, the quest for religious freedom, a nation that was built on an ideal that individual rights come from God, not government. The Christian community has ceded that great American exceptionalism to freaking loons. So, the question is, where do we go from here? And if you look at what's taking place on the college campuses around America right now, it's not looking too good. No justice, no peace, no racism, whatever, no peace. That was the beginning of a video that was footage taken exclusively by Young America's Foundation at an event at the University of Buffalo, at which Alan West, retired Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, who has a long pedigree of accomplishments, Alan West was supposed to speak there, and chaos ensued. Why? Because Alan West happens to be a conservative. And more than that, you know what? Alan West is a black conservative, which is totally unforgivable to the left. It's one thing to be a white conservative. The left can just cry racism, throw down the race card all day long. But if a black is conservative, it's a lot harder to whip out that race card because, the guy's black. So, Alan West had to be just screamed off the stage, and as one Young America Foundation official on scene described it, it was pure pandemonium. Well, I'm happy to say Alan West is here to talk about that issue and to talk about other issues related to America that feed into such nonsense, such wickedness on college campuses and public school systems around America. If this is the caliber of the youth that is coming out of our schools, my goodness, where is America headed? Christians, this in large part is due to you in the Christian community who wanted to be quiet and let bygones be bygones, and just let Jesus take the wheel, and you sit back and go to your church services on Sunday and do the holier-than-thou thing Monday through Saturday, and not get involved in the political world, not take part in the politics and culture of America. Taking a hands-off approach has left the loons in charge. Alan West, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, retired. Thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time.
Cheryl, it's a pleasure to be with you, and it really is an honor to be with an outstanding journalist such as yourself.
Oh, well, thank you, and it's an honor to have you as a guest. And I was looking at what you had sent about this shocking video and scene at a speech that you were scheduled to deliver at the University of Buffalo a few days ago for Young America's Foundation. What happened? Just take listeners through the drama there.
Yeah, sure. I'm part of the Young America's Foundation speakers group, and we go on college campuses and support these conservative students with these different chapters that they have across the country. And so we had the opportunity to go to the University of Buffalo, and the topic was race and American exceptionalism. And, the subtopic of it was America is not a racist nation. And obviously that really triggered a lot of these militant radical black students and some white students up there, because before I even got there, they were ripping down the posters announcing my coming. They had a campus-wide protest march and all of these things. And so last week, Thursday, I was there, and it was a hostile environment, but I still gave my presentation. But normally, after the presentation, which is about 30, maybe 35 minutes, you have a question and answer period, and they just became unhinged. And the thing is that you would think that here is someone that was born 61 years ago in a blacks-only hospital in Atlanta, Georgia, grew up in the same neighborhood that produced Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My elementary school was across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. I rise up to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army, command a battalion of 600, when my dad was just a corporal in a segregated army, and he served in World War II, then a member of the United States House of Representatives, and all of those life experiences, to include the life experience of my wife, who is a naturalized citizen from Jamaica, who has a bachelor's degree, an MBA, PhD. She was a college professor when we met. That just didn't sink in with them. They were just hell-bent on me having to stand up there and say America's a nasty country, it's a racist country, it's a bad country. And they were livid at the fact that here I am as a black man, I wouldn't say that. And so after the event, there was the banging on the doors, because I was inside talking to some of the YAF chapter students. There was the screaming screaming and the shouting, and the question and answer period had to be cut short, and I had to be escorted off of the campus of the University of Buffalo by police. And I'm not talking about one or two. I'm talking about 10 to 12 police had to form a line that I walked through to kind of separate myself from these militant radical students.
Now, do you know for sure that these were students that attended the school, or is there any chance that they could have been hired thugs that just came because they heard that you were delivering a speech that evening?
Well, I don't know. I know that several of them during the question and answer period. As a matter of fact, the one young lady introduced herself as the president of the Black Student Union, and she went on this unintelligible, incompetent rant and ended up calling me an embarrassment. And I kind of had to laugh because, I'm the guy with a bachelor's, 2 master's degrees, and, I have a pretty good, significant list of accomplishments in my life, and I don't see it as being an embarrassment. But, maybe there were some people that came in from the community, but I really don't know. But mostly there seemed to be students that were there.
This is very troubling, what's taking place on America's places of higher learning. You probably don't know this, but my last show was actually with a woman who attended Harvard, and she described the woke situation there where she was afraid, and she knew many students there who were afraid to say that they were conservative. And, this is taking place across America's campuses all across the nation. And I just wonder, I know you were a teacher for a year. I can't remember what year it was, but did you have any sort of warning signs when you were a teacher that this is where America's schools were headed?
Yeah, I taught high school down in Deerfield Beach, Florida, after retiring from the military. It's called the Troops and Teachers Program, and I only taught for that 1 year because it was such an enjoyable experience. I volunteered to go back to Afghanistan to teach and coach and train the Afghan Army. But you started to see the ground being fertilized for this because you didn't see the stress on real education. Everything was about the Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, and it really was not about preparing our kids to be critical thinkers. It was not about preparing them to be productive members of society, and so that was a big concern. And I think that now, when you see the indoctrination, it's in full bore, and where they're grooming these young people, even down to like K in first grade, second grade, third grade. That's the gist of what's happening down in Florida for this sexual orientation that they want to have. And now you look at our college and university campus. I think you remember recently how the Yale law students, shouting down, one of the law professors and a visiting lecturer there. This has really gotten out of control. But the bottom line is that you have these woke leftists in academia, and the left has been very good at taking over academia. They're allowing it to happen. So I think it's important that, especially in red states, we start looking at, because we got the same problem here in Texas where I live, University of Texas, even Texas A&M, University of North Texas. We've got these state-funded schools that we need to start restricting funding if they are going to have this type of atmosphere where they're not educating our kids. In case in point, University of Texas and Texas A&M, there's faculty senates both voted to continue to teach critical race theory, which is cultural Marxism, on their campuses.
I'm wondering if it's too late, and I'd like to get your response into this. I like you, no doubt, want to be optimistic about America's future. But if you see what's going on and you look at it with realistic eyes, it's very difficult to see the turnaround point. Not only are we failing to teach the youth about American exceptionalism, right? We're filling their minds with hatred for America. But we're also starting now at a very young age, sexualizing in the public school systems, no less, our youngest and most vulnerable. So where is this leading, and how can we get out of this evil trap that we're headed for?
Well, I tell you without a doubt, conservative or so-called conservative, definitely Republican lawmakers need to step up. Here in the state of Texas, when I was the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas here, one of our legislative priorities for the last session, the 87th session, was school choice. And with a Republican majority in the Texas State House of 83 to 67, a majority in the Texas State Senate of 18 to 13, we could not get school choice passed in the state of Texas. And to me, that is absolutely abhorrent. And because I look at educational freedom and school choice as the real civil rights issue of our nation right now, because parents need to be able to have a say-so and need to be able to talk about what is right and true for the education of their children, not the indoctrination. So I think it's important that we get more people, and Virginia was a great example. We've got to get more conservative lawmakers, more conservative parents on school boards and city councils. We got to make sure that we get the right people that are our state houses, state senates, all the way up to the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate. They're going to do the right thing in getting our system of education back under control. And that comes from the top all the way down to the bottom, from the bottom all the way back up to the top, because we are fighting an ideological war. And I just don't believe Republicans get it. I just believe that for whatever reason, they're too reticent. They're too recalcitrant. When I look at the fact that you had several Republicans that voted for Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is a judicial activist, to me, she perjured herself by saying she had no idea about critical race theory being taught at the school for which she sits on the board, the Georgetown Day School. So why would we continue to acquiesce and compromise with people that ideologically are the antithesis of this constitutional republic?
I want to get to Jackson in just a minute, but I want to go back to just tail a little bit off the comments you made. I actually think it has to come from the faith community, because
I agree.
I know you do, and I wonder if you could kind of gauge whether the faith community in America has been awakened enough to the dangers and perils our freedoms face by the last couple years of, say, the coronavirus clampdowns, to awaken, or is the faith community still slumbering away, just waiting for some politician to come along and save us?
Well, I think they are still slumbering away, and I think the problem is that you have many of those in the pulpit that are fearful and they're cowardly. And they're not standing up, and they're not professing what needs to be professed. And, My Faith Votes, a friend of mine, Jason Yates, has that website, and the numbers are abhorrent. In presidential election cycles, on average, 25 million Christians don't vote. In non-presidential election cycles, that number jumps up to 65 million. So, people got to stop saying that they're just going to sit back and wait for the rapture to come and for, Jesus to come back, because in the meantime, you have government, these entities that are shutting down our churches. You have them going after faith-based schools and things of that nature, and really teaching to our kids the things that aren't founded in our Judeo-Christian faith heritage. So the church has to step up, but I think it has to come from the leaders, and hopefully the congregations and the people will start putting more pressure to move away from these happy-to-glad preachers that are just going up there and milking congregations for their own largesse, and not really standing up for our Judeo-Christian principles and our faith heritage.
I got to say, one of the things that ticks me off the most is to hear from the Christian community that they don't want to get involved politically because God was the one who appointed our leaders, and we're supposed to live in this world but not of this world, and so hands off. And look at where it's led in America right now.
No, you're absolutely right. And, when you look at Romans chapter 13, and that's what everyone goes to, where it says that Christians are supposed to be subject to government, but Christians are supposed to be subject to righteous government. And I always tell people, you go back to the Old Testament, Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego, they did not bow down. Daniel did not bow down when he was told to worship and pray to Nebuchadnezzar. No. And they were willing to suffer the consequences thereof. And, of course, the Lord delivered them. So I think it's very important that the Christian community, the faith-based community, stands up and says, we are going to start elevating people that understand our principles and values. No more of this murdering unborn babies wantonly. No more of this indoctrinating our children into, sexualities and confusing them about their gender and things of this nature.
I have to compliment you on pronouncing Daniel's three friends properly, because I sort of skip over their names when I read them in the Bible. I can't even pronounce them properly in my mind. So kudos.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
And also going back to the nomination process of Jackson, and if you look at the headlines, even today, the headlines talk about the racist questions from Ted Cruz and Senator Marsha Blackburn, and the racism that that just roiled Congress as she sat there and had to take all these racist, abusive questions. What is going on with asking a person questions and being labeled racist for it? Democrats have thrown down the race card for years, but this seems a new level.
Well, it's the soft bigotry of low expectations. And that's why I find truly abhorrent in that you cannot ask anyone that is a person of color a serious question. You can't ask anyone about their judicial philosophy. You just the same as when Barack Obama was president, if you ask him about a policy question, you're a racist. And I think that's what America is sick and tired of, in that, we can't ask you a question. We can't, challenge you on an issue because all of a sudden you're going to go back and play a card. No. These are the type of questions that need to be asked of someone. But yet, when you go back and you look at how Clarence Thomas was treated, they don't care. That's fine. As a matter of fact, you look at the left right now, they're talking about Clarence Thomas needs to step down. And so this hypocrisy of that, you're an acceptable black person if you believe in our leftist ideology, which goes to what Joe Biden said back in 2020, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And so that's part of this council culture, and that's what I experienced at the University of Buffalo. If you don't believe and say as we do, we're going to come after you because we don't see you as a black person. We see you as, some subhuman. And that really is what the left has to do. They have to demonize, denigrate, disparage, and it's a very delusional and deranged approach. And Republicans, again, got to wade through this and stop falling into it and say, we have every right to question someone that wants to sit on the highest court in the land. Because when I look at Joe Biden saying, I'm going to appoint someone that's a female and black, to me, that's the biggest amount of racism and sexism, is that you don't care about qualifications. You're just looking at gender, which obviously Ketanji Brown Jackson could not even define that she was a woman, and she was selected to be because she was a woman. So that's very disconcerting. How is she going to rule on cases with Title IX, which without a doubt are going to be coming up before the Supreme Court, I think, pretty soon?
Well, you raised some excellent points, and this was an excellent discussion. I think I would love to have you back, and we can talk about how the media plays all into this, because that's the main reason the Democrats are allowed to get by with what they get by with so frequently, because of the media. So, Alan West, thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. I really appreciate your time in the discussion.
Thank you, Cheryl. I look forward to the next time.
Well, there you have it. All the solutions for what ails America right now laid out in 32 minutes. Really, if you take out the little promotions I did, in under 32 minutes, a half hour out of your day, and you have all the solutions for all the problems that ail America. Let me tell you, all roads lead back to Jesus. All roads lead back to God. And so any problem in America, you can trace it back to the failure of Americans to uphold biblical principles. Just saying. If you like Bold and Blunt, go to edify.app/podcast. Find it there. Subscribe to it there. You can also subscribe to Bold and Blunt anywhere podcasts are offered. And I'd love if you would go to WashingtonTimes.com and subscribe to my 3 times a week newsletter, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, delivered right into your email box. How great is that? You don't even have to do anything. You just click and boom, there I am, right in your email box. It contains my newsletter, all my commentaries, along with my twice weekly Tuesday and Thursday podcasts. And look, one more thing I want to mention, I have a new book coming out May 3rd. It is called Lockdown, the Socialist Plan to Take Away Your Freedom. Please pre-order it now. It doesn't have to be on Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, anywhere books are offered. But pre-order it because it's going to give you all the behind-scenes wheelings and dealings that the Democrats, yes, the Party of Socialists, that the Democrats did during the 2+ years of the coronavirus in order to exert clampdowns and controls on supposedly free Americans. And guess what? They're not letting this coronavirus go. No, they are going to keep it going as long as they can. Why? For reasons of control. My book gives you some of those behind-scenes nefarious dealings so that you will be better equipped to fight. Because guess what? Who just came out this week talking about the need to return, possibly, maybe, potentially, to face masking indoors. Oh, Anthony Fauci, everybody's favorite tyrant. Lockdown, it'll give you the tools you need to fight the Anthony Fauci that's not going away. I appreciate you listening. Tune in next time, and in the meanwhile, don't forget, be blunt, be bold.